Ja, liebe Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmer, wir kommen zum letzten Beitrag dieser Konferenz. Und dieser Beitrag handelt über Honigverfälschung. Und wir haben ja jetzt schon gehört, ich habe hier 23 Honige aus deutschen Supermärkten gekauft, davon auch einige deutsche, und habe die auf Honigverfälschung untersuchen lassen. So, kleinen Moment. Einen Schluck hier trinken. Habe sie auf Honigverfälschung untersuchen lassen mit einem erschütternden Ergebnis. Dieses Ergebnis werde ich auf einer Pressekonferenz im Januar in Berlin bekannt geben und bis dorthin Maßnahmen vorbereiten, dass diese Ergebnisse auch zu Änderungen führen, dass sie auch Konsequenzen haben. Und jetzt freue ich mich sehr, dass wir wieder international arbeiten können und ich eine Referentin aus Slowenien gewonnen habe zu dem Thema Honigverfälschung und wie geht der slowenische Imkerbund und die slowenischen Imker mit diesem Problem um, zu sprechen. Slowenien ist ja das Land der Bienen, das Land der Carnica-Biene, wobei natürlich die Carnica-Biene, wunderbare Biene, die in einer gewissen Gebirgsregion Slowenien und Kärnten, Steiermark und so weiter zu Hause ist, aber auch noch weiter im Osten. Dafür ist Slowenien bekannt. Slowenien ist aber auch vor allem bekannt dafür, dass sie eine gute Bienenpolitik betreiben und den besten Apitourismus, also Bienentourismus, den ich bisher gesehen habe. Und ich möchte auch darauf aufmerksam machen, dass der große Bienenvater Janša, der sagen wir mal, in Österreich, Ungarn und Slowenien gewirkt hat, vorgeschlagen wurde von Slowenien, der Geburtstag Janšas als Tag der Biene, und die Vereinten Nationen haben diesen Vorschlag auch aufgegriffen. Und das geht alles auf die Initiative unserer slowenischen Freunde zurück. Das zeigt, dass hier eine starke intellektuelle und moralische Verbundenheit zur Biene besteht und gleichzeitig auch in die internationalen Gremien gewirkt wird. Ich freue mich sehr auf Andreaja Borocsak, die uns jetzt einen Überblick geben wird über ihre Arbeit. Und ich erinnere noch einmal dran, jetzt ist der Livestream. Diese Konferenz wird aufgezeichnet, und wenn ihr euch auch über den Spendenlink auf unserer Webseite einloggt und registriert, eine kleine Spende gebt, bekommt ihr nachher den Link zugeschickt, mit dem ihr diese Aufzeichnungen 9 Monate lang anschauen könnt. Dieser Vortrag jetzt wird auf Englisch abgehalten und wir werden die Folien ins Deutsche übersetzen und auch eine deutsche Übersetzung dessen, was Andrea hier sprechen wird, einblenden. Das dauert aber 1-2 Wochen, bis das erledigt ist, und das könnt ihr dann ebenfalls, wenn ihr eine Spende getätigt habt und den Link bekommt, dann so anschauen, dass ihr es dann auch gut auf Deutsch verstehen könnt. Aber jetzt ist der Vortrag auf Englisch. And I warmly welcome Andreaja Borocsak. Hello, thank you for being with us, and we are very curious listening to your presentation.
Thank you for your invitation, and thank you also for that kind introduction of Slovenian beekeeper. We are really, our beekeeping is really well organized, and yes, our ministry proclaimed that's the World Bee Day of the day of Anton Janša. Our president of our beekeeping association proposed that to our Minister of Agriculture, and he was very glad, and at the end we were very glad that this came to the end, and that United Nations proclaimed that day, World Bee Day, on the day that Andreaja was born. Andreaja, yes, worked in Slovenia and worked in Austria. So and we are very proud of that man. Today I will talk about honey adulteration, which is very important theme in this time. I work at Slovenian Beekeeper Association as a food safety advisor. I work mostly on honey and also other bee products quality and also food safety. In Slovenia, there are almost 11,000 of beekeepers and only 2 million of inhabitants. So a lot of beekeepers is in Slovenia. Actually, 4 beekeepers goes per 2,000 inhabitants. But we are mostly small beekeepers. Hobbyist beekeepers, the average number of bee colonies per beekeeper is about 19. So we together possess about something more than 200,000 of bee colonies. The average age of beekeepers in Slovenia is about 58 years old, and we don't produce much honey. In the past, we were self-sufficient, but now in past years, the honey flow is not so good anymore. And in the year 2011, we produced only 1,000 and something less than 800 tons of honey. And even in the year 2019 was even worse. And also this year was not so good, so we produced only 1,300 tons of honey. So we are not so self-sufficient anymore, but we are trying to produce very good bee products. You know probably that in Slovenia our beehives are a little bit different than most of the beekeepers around the world use. We have that's so-called AGE hives. You say that Hinterbehandler hives, and mostly beekeepers use this kind of hives. Also Langstroth, but very little. In Slovenia is only one national beekeeper association. There are about 206 local beekeepers societies. They are regarding the municipalities in Slovenia, but only one national beekeeper association. The membership of Slovenian Beekeeper Association is not obligated, is voluntary. So Slovenian Beekeeper Association has 8,000 of members. We take special care in the conservation of the autochthonous carniolan bee, Apis mellifera carnica, which was Mr. Binder talked in introduction. We're very proud that Apis mellifera carnica is from our area, not only from our area, but when it was described, the examples where Polman described this bee came from Slovenia. We have also observation forecasting service of nectaring. What does that mean? That means that we have scales around the Slovenia, and on that scales we measure honey flow during the season, and our manager of that scales then report the honey flow every day and predict where to transfer the bee houses. So it's very, very important for the beekeepers that transmit their bee houses around Slovenia. Slovenian Beekeeper Association is registered as a research institution also, and we manage public advisory service on the field of beekeeping technology, economy, and food safety. What does that mean, public advisory service? It means that we have teaching programs for the beekeepers. Of course, first, we advise on the field of technology, economy, and food safety for our beekeepers. We have the teaching programs. We prepare guidelines for the beekeepers, how to treat their bee colonies, how to manage the colonies to produce food safety and quality of honey. Of course, we cooperate with our authorities for preparing the legislation for the beekeepers. We also conduct some researches, and we have own laboratory for honey quality. We do analysis like water content, electrical conductivity, HMF content, diastase activity, sugar spectrum, acidity, and of course, very important, pollen analysis and sensory analysis, which are used for determination of botanical origin of honey. This is not always always easy for beekeepers, so we help them to determine the botanical origin of honey. This public advisory service is financed by Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food, so everything that we do is for free for beekeepers. Let's go now to our team. Beekeepers, we have two main roles. We are owners of the bees, so we must keep our bees healthy, and we must take care that our bees have always enough food stored in the hive. This is our first role. But also we are food producers. That means that we have to produce safety and quality bee products. If we, in the one hand, have to keep bees healthy, if we have to treat the varroa, but on the other side, we must produce food safety bee products. And also, if I'm talking in the teams about the point today, our bees always have to have enough food, enough sugar in the hives if there is not enough honey flow in the environment. But on the other hand, that sugar cannot be found in the honey. And of course, our main role, the main role of beekeeping is pollinating. Pollination of bees increase the crop, and if there are not bees, there are not enough crop. It is estimated that the benefits that bees bring when pollinating crops are 10 to 15 times higher than direct incomes from beekeeping. But people can easily calculate the cost of honey and all beekeeping products in the world, but in the market. But the benefits that bees bring to the pollination of plants are imperceptible and unseen. Do you think that people think about bees when they're eating fruits, when they're eating vegetables? Probably not. Food safety is associated also with environmental safety, uncontrolled exploitation of natural resources and irrational activities of the components of the agro-industrial complex and the agrarian sector as a whole. Copa Cogeca published a paper this February, and they said that in 2018, the total production in European Union of honey was about 283,000 tons of honey. And European Union is not self-sufficient and imports some of 40% of its honey from third countries. And in 2019, there was a decrease in honey production in the main producing countries, and also in the south and east of Europe. This decrease in production, but didn't coincide with an increase of prices. The honey prices in the main importing countries keeps falling. They calculated the average production cost in European Union for honey, and is about €4 per kilogram. And since China imports about 80,000 tons on average to the European Union, which represents 50% of overall imports since 2013. In 2019, the price for Chinese honey dropped between something less than €1 and €2.71 per kilogram. While on Child's domestic market, honey is being sold at between 9 to €36 per kilogram. Where is the difference in the price? What can make that different? Is there adding sugar the difference, that the honey is not real honey, but it's adulterated? In 2018, Professor Norberto Garcia and Richard D. published a chart where they showed that the number of beehives on global market is increasing a little, about 10%. But honey yield per colony is decreasing for about 37%. And also, productivity estimates from largest commercial beekeepers is decreasing much more, is estimated to 65%. And on the other hand, the total exports was increasing for about 61%. How? How can be that happened if the productivity is decreasing? Can be that honey frauds, can be that sugar added to the honey. What actually is honey or food fraud? Food fraud, according to the legislation, is any suspected intentional action by business or individuals for the purpose of deceiving purchasers and gaining undue advantage therefore. And also, general European food law regulation 178 from the year of 2002. This is general European food law, which all the beekeepers around Europe must know, because we have to respect this law. And in Article 8, this regulation is dealing with prevention of fraudulent and deceptive practices and adulteration of food, and any other practices that may mislead. And what is honey fraud? First, we have to see what is honey. We all know what is honey, and in European legislation, Council directive relating to honey is written that honey is the natural sweet substance produced by Apis mellifera bees from the nectar of plants, or from secretions of living part of plants, or excretions of plant-sucking insects on the living parts of plants, which bees collect and then transform by combining with specific substances of their own deposit, dehydrate, store, and leave in honeycombs to ripen and to mature. And only this is honey. So they collect nectar, and this must, or honeydew, and this must be ripened and mature in the honey. And honey, for sure, is a valuable food. It is mainly composed of sugars, but it also contains many other substances, such as proteins and enzymes, amino acids, vitamins, organic acids, minerals, phenolic and volatile compounds, and it works also antimicrobial, microbiological, and also it has antioxidant activity. And because of these minor components and these significance that I mentioned, honey is very valuable for food humans, especially for the consumers with preference toward natural foods. It is also widely used as sweetener in food industry and in large number of processed food products. And its market values is much higher than other commonly utilized sweeteners, such as refined cane sugar, beet sugar, corn syrup, maple sugar, and so on. And as a consequence of that valuable food and that also high production costs, is very valuable for adulteration, because that other sweeteners are very cheap, and also there are quite big limitation of official methods to detect honey frauds. Honey frauds are, because of that, often on the honey, on the honey markets. But when placed honey on the market, or when honey is used as honey or in any products intended for human consumption, honey should never have added any food ingredient, including food additive, so including sugar, and it shouldn't have any other additions be made other than honey. As far as possible, it has to be free from organic or inorganic matters foreign to its composition. And also in that honey directive is written down that the country of or countries of origins where the honey has been harvested shall be indicated on the label. However, there is exceptions. When the honey is originates in more than one member state or third country, there this honey origin can be replaced with one of the following, with the description as blends of European honey, blends of non-European honey, and blends of European and non-European honey. And this is quite, in our opinion, this must be changed. I will talk about that a little bit later. What are the forms of honey adulteration? When we think about honey adulteration, we always think that somebody who wants to have some profit put in the honey some additional syrup, which is very cheap, we heard before. This is direct and this is most common honey adulteration. On the other hand, there is also possibilities of indirect honey adulteration. What does that mean? If we feed the bees with sugar during the honey flow season, then also we can have adulterated honey. And for my opinion, there are also intentional and unintentional honey adulteration. Where it's intentional, somebody is gaining advantage, and where it's unintentional, usually it can be done by the beekeepers when we do some mistake in our technology, or when bees forage in the environment or something there is not nectar or honeydew. When we're talking of intentional honey fraud, it's the most common and everybody thinks the first of it, and I believe it's the most of that is on the honey market, is when somebody is putting some honey syrup into the honey. And there can be a lot of different types of honey syrup, and they're not all easy to detect and to find. And also, beekeepers can feed the bee colonies during nectar flow, and if we do that, then I think we are not beekeepers, we are somebody who is taking some advantage, and we are not supposed to do that. And also extracting immature honey and dehumidifying it by mechanical means, which of course then can increase then total production and productivity per hive, while reducing cost. If we can put out from the hive the honey which has more than 20% of water, then the bees can collect new honey and make new honey, and the production and productivity per hive is higher. But is this honey, if it doesn't have enough enzymes and it is not matured in the hive, it is not honey. According to our legislation, the honey must ripen in the hive, not then artificially outside the hive. And also, as adulteration is considered honey which has mislabeling botanical or geographical origin. For geographical origin, it's for sure. If you want to sell European honey, but it's not from European, you can mislabel as European honey and hope that the laboratory will not catch you up. And also sometimes botanical origin, if this is mislabeled, then is considered as adulteration. Sometimes also honey blends that are produced by men, if this is not written on the jar that this honey is honey blends produced by a man that is blending together, then it can be sold. Like the statement that honey is blends of different kind of sorts or geographical origin must be put on the label. And for example, this kind of jar which you see on the picture, if this kind of honey, which is obvious, this is not acacia honey, is sold like acacia honey, that is also mislabeling and is considered as adulteration. Why is this kind of honey, which is on the picture, labeled as acacia honey? Acacia honey can have higher price if or regarding the floral honey. But if the honey is so dark, like this one of the picture, it can be acacia honey. If the appearance doesn't fit for the acacia honey, that is not acacia honey. So sometimes some honey which is not chestnut honey sold like chestnut honey, or acacia floral honey sold by acacia honey. But sometimes I also believe that this kind of mislabeling is not intentional, that is unintentional, because it's not so easy to determine the honey sorts every time. When the honey has not just significant characteristic for the special sorts, then it's not so easy to determine the botanical origin. And I think that sometimes beekeepers just can make mistake to do that. But at the end, you don't know why the honey has been labeled in such way, if there is a mistake of beekeepers or some intention to make a fraud. So in laboratory, you cannot know why this can happen. Because of honey is quite often adulterated, the Committee on the Environment public, not just honey, because the food is quite often adulterated. The Committee on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety prepare a list of top 10 products that are most at risk of food fraud, and honey is on that list. It is on the 6th place of top 10 products that are most at risk of food fraud. If you would compare this list with a list of the United States, then you will see that in the United States the honey is on 3rd place of top products that is at most risk of food fraud. In 2016, in European Union, there was an action where they collected 2,264 of honey samples around the whole Europe. Also, Norway and Switzerland participated. And the honey was then all of the samples were checked in the member states on if they are compliant with the honey directive. So some quality analyses were performed, and then 893 samples were transferred to phase 3, where Joint Research Center also conduct that isotopic analysis to check if the honey are adulterated. And out of that 893 samples, 14% of these samples were adulterated. Here is the table where you can show the percent of this adulterated honey. Almost 20% of this honey were blends of European honey. 10% of these samples were blends of non-European honey. Almost 10% also blends of European and non-European honey. Unblended honey from member states was almost 20%, and unblended honey from third country was also 20%. So high amount also of adulterated honey from European member states. In the phase 1 and 2, that non-compliance is detected by the European countries was mostly directed to the declaration of the botanical sources, 7%, and 6% of adulteration with sugar. And very little, 2% of the samples were non-compliant with related to the declaration of the geographical origin. And they assumed, as I said before, some non-compliances related to the botanical sources are probably unintentional because of beekeepers not knowing or producers not knowing about the right honey source, and because bees foraging a wide variety of plants, and there is really wide variety of significance of the honey. So it's not so easy, always so easy to determine the botanical origin. Also here in Slovenia, we have mostly what we do in our laboratory is to help beekeepers to determine the origin of the honey. The water content is here in Slovenia because of our hives, which we have absolutely no problem. Our average water content is about 14 to 15%, and it's really, the honey is ripening in our hives, and the HMF activity and also DIST activity are always according to the legislation, because we are not self-sufficient, and we sell the honey usually among 1 year, and the most time beekeepers have problems to determine the honey sort. So this is the main work that we do in our laboratory. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the results of this coordinated plan indicate that the practice of adding sugars to honey is occurring also on European Union and also in third countries. That honey that is not honey, and which comes to our market, it's of course very cheap. There is no profit, and then if there is no profit, there is no economic interest for beekeepers. If there is the beekeepers, there is not beekeepers. If the beekeepers will not survive, there will be less bees. At the end, there will be no bees, there will be no pollination, and our breakfast will be very much poorer than it is now. From pollination of insects is dependent 80% of our plants, our agriculture plants and wild plants. And the value of population in agriculture is estimated to be in world of 153 billion per year, but in European Union about 22 billion per year. So the value of pollination is priceless and is usually unseen. Crop yields in areas pollinated by bees increase on average by 30 to 50%. If there are bees, there is 30 to 50% more crop. And visiting 80% of plants which are cross-pollinated, both wild and agriculture, bees generally promote insemination of forest, shrubby, field, garden, meadow, all entomophilous vegetation, which at intensive pollination steadily renews itself and is food product for people, is the shelter and source of a forage for many insects, birds, and animals, strengthens soil, support activity of local fauna. And all this actually preserves and stabilizes the ecology of agriculture, both on separate plot and in general. And the disappearance of bees will undermine global food safety around the world. On the earth, more than 2,000 species of blossoming plants can disappear, and that will destroy basis of ecosystem. And according to the worst forecast, after the total disappearance of bees, the mankind will die from hunger and lack of oxygen, which plants give during the period from 4 to 10 years. And many people will remain without work, but it's even more without food. This would be our world. You can see on the left side our life now, and if there will be no food. So we cannot let this happen. What can we do that this will not happen? Of course, the European Union must ensure that any honey imported from the third countries is in line with European definition of honey. It must be mature in hives. It must be with no sugar. It is necessary to implement efficient traceability system to clearly identify the origin of honey. And efficient detection method for adulteration affordable for all operations. This must be done. What can also we do? What can also do our government? What can do our beekeeper association? What can do the beekeepers ourselves? We can actively inform consumers about the importance of consuming locally produced bee products. And even more, we can promote consumers to purchase locally produced honey directly from us, directly from beekeepers. And when we sell honey in every promotional activity, we can inform consumers about the importance of an awareness of the origin of honey before each purchase. And also, I was talking before about the legislation of labeling and labeling blends of European and non-European honey. We believe that there must be change, that we must change the legislation governing the labeling of honey. On the level of European, there should create labeling regulations that require the declaration of all geographical origins of honeys contained in jar. This January, our Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food, together with Portugal and also the support of like-minded member states, at session of the European Agriculture and Fishery Council, called on the European Commission to establish a clearer indication of the origin of the honey mixture. We believe that article about in the Council Directive, which talks about blends of honey and European, non-European honey, must be changed and must be changed in the way that it will be said. The country or the countries of origin where the honey has been harvested shall be indicated on the label. Please support us in this initiative. Tell your ministry to support our ministry, and we believe that in few years this legislation will be changed. Why must be changed? Because the characteristics of honey dependent on the geographical origins. And since honey is used for nutrition and therapeutical purposes, the information is valuable for the consumer. In addition, knowing the honey's country of origin is of key importance in ensuring better traceability and thus protecting consumers, as well as raising consumers' awareness that in all countries the nature is conserved through beekeeping. Until now, I was talking a little about intentional adulteration. Then adulteration is when somebody puts sugar in the honey, or if the beekeepers or if the bees are fed with the sugar during the honey flow. Now I will tell a little bit about unintentional, which are usually an indirect adulteration. And in this unintentional indirect adulteration, the main role have we, beekeepers. If we are talking about feeding bee colonies during nectar flow, or if we are talking about extracting immature honey, I'm not talking about that. Who do that know exactly what to do, and this is intentional adulteration, and this cannot do the beekeeper. I'm talking about the mistake that we can make in technological process. If we want that bee will survive the winter, or even if the bee will survive the nectarless periods, which in last years there are in Slovenia at least, there are more and more nectarless periods. This year and also last year, especially last year and also this year, it was disaster. We have to feed the bees. We had to feed the bees in spring. If we didn't do that, then the bees could not survive not the winter, but before. It cannot survive the nectarless periods. But we have to be aware at the beginning that we put sugar in our hives, there is a risk then sugar can be found in the in the honey. To give the bees right quantity of sugar and have no risk to find that sugar in the honey, it's very difficult. We have to have a lot of experience and we have to take a lot of care, because bees also relocate the already stored food in the hive from the brood chamber to the honey chamber. And also, this is not so often, but sometimes we also can forage in the sugar in the environment. And the first article of honey directive says that it's only nectar or honeydew that can be collected in the nature. Only then is honey. If the bee found some artificial sugar in the environment, they did that. You didn't help them to do that, but at least anyway, it's not a honey. That's why, because we are in Slovenian Beekeeper Association, we are aware that it's not so easy for beekeepers to know how much sugar put into the hives and to have authentic honey. That's why we perform an experiment. The bees always have to have enough food stored, but how much is that? It's not so easy. So we fed the bees from the April to May. We fed the bees with the pasture that we made ourselves and put yeast and also a dye used in bakery. It was blue and red color. We put that in the pasture, and you see here the pasture is blue and pasture is red. And this dye and yeast served as a marker. And then we monitored what happened with that stored pasture that we put into the bee colonies. We divided colonies into 3 groups, and the first one received 150 grams of bee pasture per feeding per week. The second group received 300 of grams per week, and the third group received half of kilo per week. So at the end of our experiment, the first group received 1 kilo and 35 of added pasture, the second group 2.7 kilo, and the third group 4.5 of kilos. And what happened? You see that bee ate that pasture and put it into the combs. You can see here this honey, which is not honey, is green because of blue dye. This honey, which is not honey, became green. And these were then our samples from the group 1, 2, 3. This was control group, which didn't receive any pasture in the spring. So you see that this honey, which is not honey, accordingly the color it's not honey, was more green than the first group, which received little amount of pasture. In the second year, we put red color, and this red color is not so intensive than in the honey, because the honeys look like chestnut or fir honey or spruce honey. So it was not so efficient color. The better one was the green one, which evidently showed that the pasture of came to the honey. We then performed some sensory, microscopic, and also physicochemical analysis. Sensory analysis is shown here. You see that according to color, they're adulterated. Microscopic analysis was performed like we do the analysis for pollen analysis, where we check the botanical origin of honey. We do pollen analysis, and in that sediments we also found that small circles. These are yeast. So yeast was a very good marker for honey adulteration. And also then some physicochemical analysis like foreign enzymes and international standard isotope ratio analysis, so isotopic analysis that were that was performed to detect honey fraud also revealed some honey adulterations. So in conclusions, we put too much food to the bee colonies in the spring, but there are big difference between the groups between the bee colonies which received the smaller amount of food and the higher amount. Some of the samples from the first group were not adulterated, were even not green, and were even with other chemical analysis we didn't reveal the adulteration. But when we put the higher amount of food, most of them was adulterated. And we also performed another experiment. We had our bee colonies only in the brood chamber, and this was also in the spring, and when also the honey flow was in the nature. And even there was honey flow, we fed the bees with that green pasture, and even if they have they can go out to forage in the environment, they took our pasture and they put it into the combs. And then we also put in the hives combs in the honey chamber and stop feeding, and you can see what happened. The bees transferred, relocate the stored honey in the food chamber to the honey chamber. So we cannot eliminate this fact. Bees can relocate the stored food in the honey, and this must be keeping in mind where the laboratories are conducting analysis of honey adulteration, because we must be aware that the stored sugar can be relocated, and we must feed the bees, otherwise there is no chance to survive in nectarless period. And also, which happens sometimes, hopefully sometimes, bees can forage on different sugar source in the nature. 2 years ago, 2 beekeepers from the same area came to us because their honey tasted strange. It tasted like sugar candy. It tasted like Smarties sugar candy, you know, that chocolate sugar candies. And of course, the taste was very strange, and beekeepers noticed that. And then we perform electric conductivity, which was very low. Then we also checked the sediments, and you see this is the regular sediments of chestnut honey, but in this honey, which was at the end not honey, the content of pollen was very low, and also some sediments which was unknown for the honey. So these bees must found something sweet in the environment. What did they found? We don't know. We didn't be able to find out what happened. And is beekeeper responsible for that kind of adulteration? We cannot tell bees where to go, but at the end we are responsible for our honey. So if your honey is tasting strange, it's tasting atypically, then send into the laboratory to do some physicochemical analysis. And is unintentional adulteration also honey fraud? Yeah, well, the laboratory gets the honey, they cannot know on which way the honey was adulterated. If we put we put in honey syrup directly, or bees found nectar in the environment and we put some syrup or pasture in the honey, and bees collect this and made a honey, at the end the result will be the same, will be adulterated honey, and for laboratory it will be the same results. Lutz Elflein, which works in Eurofilms in 2011, came to Slovenia on one conference, and I was asking about this. I was discussing about this with him, and also I was asking about this relocation of stored honey, and he told that 30 to 5% of cross-contamination should be below the limit of quantification of adulteration methods, so that they will not discover this. Methods for honey authenticity testing, there are quite many methods, but they're not so cheap. The most used are isotopic analysis. Now there are also performing nuclear magnetic resonance profiling and also mass spectrophotometry. Also they are looking for foreign enzymes in the honey. And also that some quality parameters like this activity, proline, invertase, and also pollen and sensory analysis can something reveal that something is not okay with the honey. But some of these methods in our experiment didn't reveal obvious example of adulterated honey, like this one of the picture. Only the color, which was obvious, discovered that honey was adulterated. Also, Lutz Elflein showed in last year in on Apimundi and Montreal about these methods, and if we feed the bees or if honey is adulterated with cane syrup or corn syrup, then it's quite soon revealed, this adulteration. If we feed beet syrup, then the new methods are quite efficient. But if the one who knows what to do, the knows how to adulterate the honey, you use tailor-made syrups, that it's very hard to reveal that the honey is adulterated. That some of these samples came through as a pure honey. These analyses are not so cheap, can be quite much expensive, about 800 euros if we do most of the analysis. With that new analysis is about 480 euros, and should beekeeper pay 500 euros for checking our own honey? What must or what can we beekeepers do? We have to take care for our bee colonies. We have to take care that they always have enough food, because otherwise they're not able to survive. But caution when feeding. In spring, if needed, better to feed the colonies more times with smaller quantities of bees than once in large amount will be fed. I say that according to our experiments, where in small quantities sometimes the honey were not adulterated. And use hive scales in the beehives to measure the food consumption through winter. Through year, through honey flow, you can record how much did bee colonies bring to our hives, and in the winter and in spring, we can also measure how much is the food consumption. And be sure that combs in honey chamber before honey flow don't contain any sugar feeding. It must be without any sugar feeding. We always have to respect good beekeeping practice. We must be aware that excessive sugar feeding can cause adulteration of honey. In Slovenian Beekeeper Associations, we prepared some guidelines of good manufacturing practice, and we organized lectures for our beekeepers when we talk about this a lot. On these lectures, we talk about safety, about using the medicines for varroa control, and also we have to take caution when feeding the bees. That the bees have to have enough store food, but on the other hand, we have also be caution about sugar in our honey. That's why we do some analysis of honey, which are financed according to the national apiculture programs in measure enhancement of product quality with the view to exploiting the potential products on the market. We use also that implementation, that measure in that national program, implementation of applied research programs. Every program period, we do some applied research programs. In this year, we are making characterization of our bee products, not only honey, but also royal jelly, propolis, and bee pollen. And of course, we do a lot of promotion of buying local food, fighting against honey import. This is our advisory service. We have our own Slovenian, we also promote our beekeepers to use honey quality schemes. We have Slovenian honey with protected geographical indication, and honey which is included in that quality scheme has is under more control, also our inter control, and one additional external control. Also, the Slovenian honey with protecting geographical indication is on the whole area of Slovenia, and there are also karst honey with protected designation of origin, which is in the coastal region, honey from the coastal region, and also one same little quantities of honey is Končevje forest honey with protected designation of origin schemes. And from 2007, we organized a promotional action, traditional Slovenian breakfast, which was then also became European honey breakfast. And every third Friday in November in Slovenian nurseries and primary schools get for breakfast butter, honey, milk, and apple. And at that time, beekeepers came to the school and to nurseries and talk about beekeepers and to raise the awareness of importance of bees at the children. And then they take home some promotional materials to their parents, so the people are aware of that. We have also a unique bee products package like you have, that this is the jar for our honey and also the bottle for our meadow. And when consumers see that honey is in that jar, knows that it is from Slovenia. In last few years, we also started with a promotional action, coffee with honey, where on the petrol station you can, instead of sugar, also can get a small pockets of honey, so to drink coffee instead of sugar with honey. And in every municipality in Slovenia, on the same day, it is in June, usually we perform an open days with Slovenian beekeepers, and usually pupils from school comes and also the other citizens. And it was said in the introduction of our association, Slovenia is well known with apitourism. We have first certified apitourism providers on the world, and also tourist guides in the world. The beekeepers who wants to have more for the consumers, they can apply to our association. We go there and check their offer, and then we give them bees, the number of bees. Like the hotels has number of stars, we give them number of bees. And some of the beekeepers also have for the consumers, they offer also honey massage in the api houses. You know, our bee hives are not self-standing outside, but they are put in the bee houses, and in bee houses we can go in. You can stay there and listen to the bees and also breathe the air from the hive. And instead of that mask then you put on the face, we don't need mask, we just go into the bee houses. And also then sometimes they perform honey massage in that bee houses, and depending what you offer, you can get this kind of bees. And from that year 2007 till now, we also measured, according to some questionnaire, how much the consumption of honey in kilogram per person raised. And in 2007, when we started with that breakfast, it was about 1 kilo and a half, and now it's about 2 kilos. So in that more than 10 years, we raised a little bit consumption of the honey per kilos. And we must to aware our consumers that there will be no bees, there will be no life. You can see on that link a movie that we made last year in the or years ago in 2018. We do that, and it is in English with subscription in English. At the World Bee Day, we tried to show our consumer how important the bees are. And in one of our quite big supermarket, not in Ljubljana, which is our capital, but in one smaller, but third, the biggest city of Slovenia, in one supermarket, we eliminated every vegetable and fruit from the shelves where bees or other pollinators are needed to do the pollination. And the shelves, you can imagine, were quite without any food, any fruit and vegetables, and you can see how the people react. They were just staying and looking. They cannot believe what happened. Why there is no vegetable, almost no vegetable and fruit in that store. We were able to do that only for 1 hour in one, not the biggest market in Slovenia, because we didn't have courage to do that in the capital of Slovenia, because the shelves were really so empty. And this is one thing how we can show the peoples how important the bees are. Thank you for your attention. If you have any question, you can always write me an email to that email address, and I can answer you. And also thank you for your invitation to your conference.
Vielen Dank, Andrea.
Am I on air? Oh yeah, thank you, Andrea, for your speech. Very impressive, and you mentioned the efforts the Slovenian Beekeepers Association are trying to do to convince and to teach the public to buy Slovenian honey. I would have some remarks just to complete the picture. You said you teach the Slovenian public to buy Slovenian honey. But are you self-sufficient? If you are not self-sufficient, I'm sure you sell already all Slovenian honey in Slovenia. So why do you follow this strategy?
We still believe that the people have to buy our honey. And of course, there are also some people who cannot afford to buy Slovenian honey, which their salary are too low. This you probably go to the local markets and buy some cheap honey. But otherwise, our idea is to inform how important the bees are and to buy Slovenian honey. Yes, but we are not self-sufficient. No.
Okay, so thank you for this. And when you were speaking about adulteration, you were also mentioning the unintended adulteration by the beekeeper. And as you mentioned, it depends how we treat the bees, how we feed the bees, and especially about the good beekeeping practice. This is the part we can teach our beekeeper, you in Slovenia, we in Germany, the Austrian in Austria. And this is already being done sometimes quite well, sometimes not yet quite well. I think the bigger problem is the intended adulteration, because whoever may be responsible for the adulteration, this is a business. This is a business, and it is a political strategy. If we have too much honey on the market for a price which is not sustainable, beekeepers could not produce honey for €3 per kilo in drum. This is not possible for a European beekeeper. But we get honey into the European market for 150. So if you flood our market with honey of that price. This will cause a decrease of beekeeper, a decrease of harvest, and in the end this has an enormous effect on the dependency to the food coming from markets where food is available. So this is, in my opinion, the biggest problem of this, and we should find a way to protect the honey fort. So do you have any strategy together with us and with other European countries to really increase the testing methods and to update the testing methods every year?
Yeah. As I said in my presentation, our ministry proposed to the Council of the Member States the first thing that on the label the country of origin must be written down. Not only blends of honey, European, non-European honey, but the origin of honey must be putting down. In that kind, we could to make better the traceability of the honey and to know exactly from which country most of the adulterated honey comes. This for us is the first strategy, and our ministry support our idea and already put into the program of that council. And of course, the methods must be better. They are quite enough, but some of the tailor-made syrup still comes through that, and it's then not revealed the adulteration of, and this is a problem. This is a problem that there can be still a lot of honey which is adulterated, but we don't know that it is adulterated, and it's cheap. This is the main problem, of course, but here if I also talk to the beekeepers, first we have to also respect our good good beekeeping practice, that we can then eliminate also the fraudulent honey from our market.
Yes, thank you. This is important in my opinion. I bought 23 samples of honey a few months ago and was testing them in the laboratory where the honeys have been tested from Apimondia. And I got the results now last week. I don't want to go too much into the details because I will make a press conference in January in Berlin to give the results. But what I would like to say today is I was astonished that none of the honeys came from China. They came from different countries, but none came from China. Maybe the laboratory did not detect it, and the adulteration was so brilliantly done that he could not find it. But anyway, there were some adulterations found, and I don't want to say today because I want to spare it for the press conference, but the results were terrible. And we still have this on the market all the time, and this honey is disturbing our beekeeper. So this has to stop. And I would like to invite you and maybe other countries to make a common effort to communicate this honey adulteration to the public. It is known within the professional world, but it is not known in public, and we need the public pressure.
We do a lot of promotional activities just because of this, that our consumers can buy really pure honey and to protect our beekeepers. Because if there will be no profit for beekeepers, there will be no beekeepers, not enough beekeepers anymore.
Yeah,
and we show the world what could happen.
Yes, this is the main problem. As far as I understood, most of Slovenian beekeepers are no professionals. They are hobby beekeepers. So if they don't make any profit, it doesn't mind. How do you handle this problem?
I think that awareness of being beekeeper in Slovenia is so high that also the small beekeepers are doing something for profit, just to make their social and economical status a little bit better than it is. So it's also good also for them to beekeep and to make a little bit profit. But being beekeeper in Slovenia is something more. And every year we have new beekeepers. So the awareness is high, and at this moment we don't find that there is a problem with that. I don't know what will happen in a few years, but now a lot of new beekeepers we have every year, even in that kind of position that we have. And beekeepers sell everything what produce among a year, so there is a little interest also for them to be beekeeper.
Yeah. So this is encouraging, and I always like to remember the visit of Apimondia in Ljubljana. It is already 20 years ago, and I was very impressed by the proudness of the Slovenian beekeeper. So I like it very much, and since then I try to invent a clothes for beekeepers in Germany, and I was discouraged by some responsible people who did not want to follow this project, but now I decided if responsible people from associations will not follow this idea, I will start it without them, because this is a very important thing to strengthen the proudness and the identity of beekeeper.
Yeah. A lot of people say, that Apimondia in 2003 was one that was most impressive, and everybody remembers this Apimondia. Everywhere I go, everybody mentioned that Apimondia and our awareness. And if you saw on my picture at the beginning, this one, here are the beekeepers which are dressed in our uniform, and almost every local societies have their own flags. I don't know how it say that kind of flags. And when we have some every ceremony that we have, people come with that and show their proudness to be a beekeeper. So the awareness is quite high. And also we increase that with that actions, because every year we go to the nursery schools, we go to the primary schools and raise that awareness through the people of Slovenia.
That's great, that's great. I asked the president of the German Beekeeping Association, with 130,000 members, to start the process together with all the stakeholders in Germany to apply for Apimondia. I hope you would enjoy our application and you would support us. I don't know when it will happen, because as in all big countries, if you have to bring together a lot of stakeholders, this needs a lot of time, and it needs also, you must also have a good amount of nerves and of humor to bring everybody together, but I am sure we will get it during my lifetime, and I would love to invite Slovenian beekeepers then to Germany.
Yeah, I'm sure we will come, because it's very easy to come to the state which is so close to us, not to travel in Chile or something like that, like next 4 years.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I will translate your slides into German and make the German translation, spoken translation to this presentation. I will need 1 or 2 weeks for it, and then publish it. So thank you very much for your presentation, and I hope we see each other sooner or later for a debate.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Thank you. So, liebe Imkerinnen und Imker, vielen Dank, dass ihr dabei wart bei dieser virtuellen Konferenz hier in Kirchberg an der Jagst mit dem Titel Wir schaffen das, natürlich mit einem leichten ironischen Unterton. Wir haben es aber jetzt auch geschafft und jetzt ist auch wichtig, dass wir Imkerinnen und Imker also was heißt es, die Krise, die jetzt über uns gekommen ist, zu überstehen, zum einen wirtschaftlich zu überstehen, zum anderen natürlich auch menschlich und moralisch zu überstehen. Und wir möchten euch mit diesen Beiträgen Nahrung geben, intellektuelle Nahrung, mit der ihr ins nächste Jahr gehen könnt. Und ich möchte euch nochmal einladen, registriert euch über unser Spendentool und nutzt die Gelegenheit, die Beiträge noch mehrmals im Laufe des Winters anzuschauen und zu studieren. Sie waren so inhaltsreich, dass man die Inhalte sowieso nicht so ohne weiteres mit einem Mal erfassen kann. Und dann werden wir euch einladen zu unserer Pressekonferenz zur Honigverfälschung im Januar nach Berlin. Wie wir das genau machen, wissen wir noch nicht. Das hängt natürlich auch vom Verlauf ab. Ich stelle mir vor, dass wir eine Pressekonferenz machen und dann anschließend noch 2, 3 Vorträge streamen, aber auch mit Live-Publikum, insofern das im Januar in Berlin wieder möglich ist. Dann soll ja das verschobene Bienensymposium vom 12. bis zum 14. März in Weimar stattfinden. Sobald wir wissen, wie die Corona-Lage dann ab Januar wieder gehandhabt wird, werden wir eventuell auch wieder den Ticketverkauf freigeben, weil wir sind umgezogen ins Schießhaus, weil die Teilnehmerzahl so stark angewachsen ist und da haben wir natürlich jetzt dann noch Plätze frei. Wir mussten ja den Verkauf stoppen, also das wird dann in den nächsten Wochen kommuniziert und wir werden nächstes Jahr erstmals eine Konferenz in Friedrichshafen durchführen und zwar im April, Anfang April. Das wird dann in Zukunft unser Konferenzgeschehen sein. Im Sommer in Kirchberg an der Jagst, im November in Weimar, im Dezember in Berlin und im März oder April in Friedrichshafen, sodass die Imkerinnen und Imker aus dem Bodenseegebiet, von der Schweiz, von Liechtenstein und von Österreich es leichter haben, daran teilzunehmen. Ich möchte nochmal daran erinnern, dass wir ab Januar wieder Kurse machen, allerdings dann für die Personen, die ein Abo gelöst haben. Das Abo nennen wir Premium-Mitgliedschaft in der Armbruster Imkerschule. Wir bieten da 30, 35 Schulungseinheiten statt, wo wir live miteinander diskutieren können. Das werden wir ab Januar nicht mehr gratis machen, sondern nur für die Premium-Mitglieder und für die VIP-Mitglieder, also diejenigen, die dann ein Jahresabo gebucht haben, diese Gespräche mit uns zu führen. Außerdem werden wir einen Teil des Geldes an die Apimondia und an BeLife weiterleiten. Ihr findet die Broschüre online auf unserer Webseite unter der Rubrik Fördermitgliedschaft und ich möchte euch herzlich bitten und auffordern, da diesen Beitrag zu leisten. Damit helft ihr uns, unabhängig zu bleiben und solche Kampagnen wie die Honigverfälschungskampagne durchzuführen.